like to start by introducing our fantastic contributors today. We have a huge diversity here, both in terms of origins, of experience, and we have here, to my left, Musarello Barry. Musarello Barry is one of the very, very few heads of civil aviation authorities on the planet who is also a woman. We have less than 10 on the planet, and it's a true honor to have you with us today. I know that the journey has been quite demanding, with lots of hours on the plane, and she just made it on time.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are here today to talk about emerging threats in security threats in aviation. So we have, I'm turning to you today now. You are in charge of the Civil Aviation Authority, and we hear about these emerging threats that have some scary implications, talking about jamming of signals, taking aircraft somewhere with really instructions that are not correct. But at the same time, your day-to-day obligations are still to maintain safety at the airport. You still have to maintain security at the airport. How do you manage the traditional approach to security in aviation with these emerging threats?
Thank you. I think it's a combination, because ultimately what happens in the airport, in the operation, is a reflection of your regulation and what you're trying to enforce. So I think as a regulator, we have a key role in making sure, number one, the principles are there in terms of the regulation, and that our inspectors are equipped with the skills and knowledge to execute. Because ultimately, when we're performing our oversight functions, we're there to make sure compliance, and that compliance is the underlying benchmark of safety and security. For me, what I find interesting is that in all of the submissions, we've mentioned the human element. And for me, the human element, though old, is very central and still an emerging threat. So reference to insider threat. Even in AI, humans are programming machines. In airport infrastructure, most of the functions are being performed by human beings. So it's very important to look at, number one, background checks of people and those that have access to airport facilities, sensitive areas, and make sure that we're applying measures like behavioral detection, that we are engaging, and there's a huge element of instinct involved in detecting issues and finding possible solutions. So I think ultimately, as a regulator, you're there to make sure you have the policies in place, but what's good for us is that we have a direct responsibility also on the actual implementation on the ground. So it's a twofold approach. And I think lastly, I'd like to comment that in overcoming these emerging threats, we have to have a multi-sectoral approach with the security sector, with intelligence, and that's how we're going to have a comprehensive strategy, I would say, because it's going to continue changing. We're not going to have one solution today. So I think that's the approach I think would be the most sustainable.
Thank you very much. So that's critically interesting, because we were talking
to your fate. If you know what to do conventionally, you might survive. If not, so training is a very important part of the equation, and focusing on the human factor.
Can I just pick up on that? Because I think I always say, similar with security, if all else fails, open the bag, pat someone down. And this is, again, going down to the raw skills. And
yes,
we run the risk of sometimes being over-digitalized and losing focus on the fundamentals. And I think both safety and security have those fundamentals that we should maintain despite our evolution into technology.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of that? Thank you. Musayero, you said something very interesting, the perspective of the regulator. You need to ensure that your aviation system is compliant. That's your role, right? When you listen to them, these technology companies that are telling us about these threats, what's your reaction? Do you actually want to pick up your phone and call them to say, hey, help me? Or would you think, I need to talk to my neighbors and to the industry players to look at how to have regulations evolve to answer to those threats. What's your reaction on this?
I think definitely for me, the initial response is engagement with colleagues and CAAs and industry, experts, because, like you said, where you're applying those regulations is where you need to get insight from. So we're very big on, MOUs and sharing technical expertise in working groups that share ideas around new concepts such as cybersecurity. And I think it's very important for a regulator to be on top of training and top of capacity building, because it's all about equipping your staff with the ability to deliver. So when we have these new scenarios and these emerging threats, you always have to be forward thinking. I'm glad we've talked about preparedness, because I think it's one thing as well that we talk about, but in reality, how many simulations are done around activities of, security concern or safety concern. And I think as a regulator, that's one of the things as well I think we should try to push for more. Until a scenario happens, you don't know how you're going to respond. We saw that with COVID. And even post-COVID now, how much of those lessons have we really incorporated into our regulations, into our systems? So it's about internalizing and making sure we get the output.
So thank you very much. So that means that, Tatevik, you're not ready to get a phone call from...
Not just
yet.
Not yet.
So, but what do you do so to get...